There is a moment in every person's life when the mirror no longer reflects who they truly are. It is not the surface that deceives us, but the depths we refuse to see. Beneath the familiar face lies a vast inner landscape, the unconscious, teeming with forgotten memories, shadowed desires, and dormant potentials waiting to awaken. Carl Jung, the architect of depth psychology, called this hidden terrain the key to self-transformation, the process through which a human being becomes whole. But what does it mean to transform the self? Is it a change of personality, or something far more mysterious? A reconfiguration of the soul itself? In this exploration, we'll journey into Jung's profound understanding of the psyche, unravel the symbols and forces that shape our destiny, and uncover how the confrontation with our own darkness becomes the bridge to light. This is not merely psychology, it is the alchemy of the soul. Jung believed that the human mind was not merely a product of thought or memory, but a living organism, an evolving system with layers deeper than reason could touch. At its surface lies the ego, the I that identifies with names, roles, and stories. It is the character we play in the great theater of life. Yet beneath it rests the vast unconscious, the true stage upon which our fate is written. Jung divided this inner world into two dimensions: the personal unconscious, containing our repressed emotions and forgotten experiences, and the collective unconscious, a timeless reservoir of archetypes, the universal symbols and patterns that connect all humanity. Every myth, every dream, every intuitive insight arises from this hidden realm. It is not chaos, it is intelligence. The ancients knew this. They called it the realm of gods and spirits, the invisible source from which all transformation begins. To Jung, self-transformation was not about adopting new habits or affirmations. It was about a sacred encounter with this deeper psyche. He described this process as individuation, the journey through which a person integrates the unconscious into consciousness, becoming whole. Most people live as fragments, half awake, half asleep, trapped in roles, fears, and social expectations. They wear masks, or what Jung called the persona, to protect themselves and fit into society. But the mask, though useful, eventually becomes a prison. When we over-identify with it, we forget that we are not the role, but the actor behind it. The first step toward transformation, then, is disillusionment, the painful recognition that the persona is not the self. Life often forces this realization through crisis: the loss of a job, the collapse of a relationship, or a profound sense of emptiness. In these moments, the unconscious begins to stir, whispering truths we can no longer ignore. But awakening to the unconscious is not a gentle affair. Jung warned that the path of transformation demands a confrontation with the shadow, the sum of all we reject or deny about ourselves. The shadow contains our envy, greed, rage, and shame, but also our neglected strengths and passions. It is the twin we disowned in order to be accepted. When left unacknowledged, it rules us from behind the scenes, projecting its contents onto others. We see in the world what we refuse to see in ourselves. Thus, the first great act of self-transformation is not to chase light, but to turn toward darkness with courage. One does not become enlightened, Jung wrote, by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The alchemists symbolize this as nigredo, the blackening phase, where the old self dissolves so that a new self may emerge. This descent into the unconscious is like entering a labyrinth. The ego resists it fiercely, for it fears dissolution. Yet within that chaos lies wisdom. The images that surface in dreams, fantasies, and synchronicities are not random. They are messages from the deeper self, guiding us toward integration. Jung saw dreams as direct communications from the unconscious, encoded in symbols. A serpent may represent instinctual renewal, a house, the psyche itself, a stranger, an aspect of the shadow. To ignore these messages is to reject the inner guide that seeks to restore balance. The psyche, Jung said, is self-regulating. It will always strive to heal its divisions, whether through dreams, intuition, or the crises that force growth. The more we resist, the louder these signals become. And so the process of self-transformation is not linear, but circular. an endless dance between the conscious and unconscious, destruction and renewal. Jung compared it to alchemy, where the lead of human imperfection is transmuted into the gold of realization. This alchemical transformation is not metaphorical, it is psychological reality. Every breakdown, every dark night of the soul, is an alchemical furnace in which our false identities are burned away. The more one surrenders to this inner fire, the more the self, the totality of one's being, emerges. The self is not the ego's improved version. It is a larger intelligence, a divine pattern that seeks expression through the individual. It is both the destination and the traveler, the mystery and the key. To follow Jung's idea of self-transformation is to recognize that within every human being lies not just a mind to be managed, but a cosmos to be awakened. As Jung delved deeper into the psyche, he realized that transformation does not occur through willpower alone. It unfolds through a dialogue between consciousness and the unconscious. The unconscious is not an enemy to be conquered, but a neglected ally awaiting recognition. Jung described this relationship as a sacred conversation where images, symbols, and emotions arise from the depths to communicate truths the rational mind cannot grasp. The ego's role is not to dominate, but to listen, interpret, and integrate. This is why transformation often begins with confusion. The old structures of identity crumble before something larger can take form. It is a process both creative and destructive, akin to a snake shedding its skin. The ego must die many small deaths to allow the self to be born. One of Jung's most profound discoveries was the concept of the anima and animus, the inner feminine in men and the inner masculine in women. He believed that every psyche is dual, containing both energies in varying degrees. The anima represents intuition, feeling, and the depths of imagination, while the animus embodies reason, action, and structure. When either side is suppressed, the personality becomes one-dimensional and imbalanced. Integration of these inner opposites awakens creativity, empathy, and wholeness. Jung saw this not as gendered psychology, but as an archetypal truth. The union of opposites is the essence of transformation. Alchemists called this the conjunctio, the sacred marriage between sun and moon, spirit and matter, consciousness and shadow. Through this inner marriage, the psyche becomes unified, and the divine spark within the individual is rekindled. Transformation also requires us to recognize the phenomenon of projection. When we see qualities in others that provoke strong emotion, whether admiration or hatred, we are often encountering fragments of our own unconscious. The person before us becomes a mirror reflecting our disowned potentials. To withdraw these projections is a critical step on the path. It means taking back the power we have unknowingly given away and realizing that the outer world is, in many ways, a theater for the soul's evolution. Jung called this process psychological integration. By recognizing our projections, we reclaim the energy trapped in illusions and redirect it toward authentic growth. The relationships that challenge us most often serve as the very crucibles for our transformation. Another mysterious aspect of Jung's psychology is synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence. Jung noticed that when individuals undergo deep psychological change, the outer world begins to mirror their inner evolution. They encounter symbols, people, or events that seem orchestrated by an unseen intelligence. To the rational mind, these are accidents. To the awakening psyche, they are confirmations of connection. Synchronicity reveals that consciousness is not isolated. It participates in a greater field of meaning. It whispers that the universe is not mechanical but alive, responsive to our inner state. When we begin to align with our deeper truth, life itself becomes a dialogue with the unseen. Jung also recognized that the path of transformation is not without peril. The unconscious is vast and powerful. One can easily become lost in its depths. He cautioned against identifying with archetypes or inflating the ego with mystical experiences. To integrate, one must remain grounded, rooted in reality while exploring the invisible. The true initiate does not escape the world, but learns to live within it more fully, balancing the spiritual with the practical. Jung often emphasized the importance of work, relationships, and creativity, as means of grounding the transformative energy. Without structure, illumination becomes delusion. Without humility, wisdom turns to pride. The alchemist's gold must be tempered in the furnace of daily life. At its core, Jung's psychology of transformation is about remembering what we truly are, not fragments of personality, but expressions of an infinite whole. The ego fears this truth because it implies surrender, a letting go of control and certainty. Yet only through this surrender does the deeper order reveal itself. The self, once hidden in dreams and symbols, begins to guide life with quiet precision. Coincidences align, old wounds become sources of insight. The opposites within us, light and dark, masculine and feminine, reason and intuition, find harmony. What emerges is not perfection but authenticity, the experience of being in harmony with one's nature and destiny. Jung called this state individuation, but it could just as well be called awakening. It is the moment when we realize that the treasure we sought outside has always been buried within. As the process of individuation deepens, a new tension emerges between the human and the divine within us. Jung understood that the psyche's ultimate goal was not mere self-improvement, but wholeness, a reconciliation of opposites so complete that it transcends duality itself. To the uninitiated, this may sound abstract, but Jung saw it as the natural evolution of consciousness. Just as nature evolves from chaos toward complexity, the soul evolves from fragmentation toward unity. The self, in Jungian terms, is not the ego's ideal self-image. It is the organizing principle of the entire psyche, the spark of the divine attempting to manifest through human experience. The journey toward the self, therefore, mirrors the ancient myths of death and rebirth, the hero's descent into the underworld, the dismemberment of the old identity, and the eventual return with the elixir of wisdom. Each of us is that hero, whether we recognize it or not. Jung often said that the gods have become our diseases. What he meant was that the archetypal forces that once animated myth now live within us, distorted and unacknowledged. When denied, they erupt as neuroses, obsessions, or addictions, modern symptoms of an ancient spiritual hunger. Self-transformation demands that we give these forces form and voice again, that we bring myth back to life within the psyche. This is why Jung encouraged the use of active imagination, a technique where one engages consciously with the images and figures of the unconscious, instead of repressing a troubling dream or dismissing an inner vision. The individual dialogues with it, allowing it to express its message. Through this dialogue, unconscious contents are integrated into awareness. It is a form of inner alchemy, turning raw emotion and chaos into insight and order. But this inner work requires immense honesty. The unconscious does not speak in the polite language of reason. It speaks in paradox, image, and instinct. Sometimes its messages disturb us precisely because they are true. Jung observed that most people resist transformation because it threatens their comfort. They prefer suffering that is familiar to change, that is uncertain. Yet the psyche will not be silenced. The more we suppress its call, the more it manifests externally as crisis. Thus, the world itself becomes a mirror of our inner fragmentation. Wars, environmental destruction, and societal division are not merely political problems. They are reflections of the collective shadow, the denied aspects of humanity projected onto the global stage. Jung believed that the transformation of the individual and the transformation of civilization are inseparable. The healing of the world begins with the integration of the human soul. This is why Jung's ideas remain so revolutionary. They propose that enlightenment is not an escape from darkness, but a reconciliation with it. The light we seek is born only through contact with shadow, just as the lotus blooms from the mud. Every suppressed emotion, every disowned fear, is potential energy awaiting transformation. The alchemists called this process coagulatio, the solidification of spirit into form, the crystallization of the divine within matter. It is not a metaphor, it is a psychological truth. The soul transforms not through denial but through inclusion. To become whole is to accept contradiction, to embrace the saint and the sinner, the rational and the irrational, the human and the divine, as parts of one cosmic fabric. In the later stages of individuation, a profound shift occurs. Life ceases to feel random. Patterns emerge where once there was chaos. One begins to sense that every experience, joyful or tragic, has been part of a larger design. Jung referred to this as the realization of the self, the center that unites the conscious and the unconscious. It is experienced as both deeply personal and universal, a recognition that one's individual journey mirrors the unfolding of the cosmos itself. The self is not something we create, it is something we uncover. It was always there, hidden beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and ignorance. The process of transformation is, in essence, the remembrance of what we have always been. When this realization dawns, the individual no longer seeks external validation or control. Life becomes participation, not domination. The world, once fragmented, reveals itself as a living symbol of the psyche. Every sunrise, every challenge, every encounter becomes an invitation to deeper awareness. This is the culmination of Jung's vision. The human being as a bridge between the finite and the infinite, between matter and spirit. To undergo self-transformation is to awaken to this truth, that we are not merely surviving beings, but vessels through which consciousness experiences itself. The goal is not perfection, but harmony, not escape, but embodiment. And in that embodiment lies liberation, the quiet recognition that to know oneself deeply is to glimpse the divine itself gazing back. The beauty of Jung's psychology is that it does not remain confined to theory. It demands participation. The transformation of the self is not achieved through reading or belief, but through experience, through conscious engagement with the symbols, emotions, and patterns that shape our lives. This is where Jungian wisdom becomes profoundly practical. It gives us tools to enter dialogue with the unconscious and to live a life of depth and authenticity. Yet this path requires courage, the courage to face what we most fear, to listen to what we have ignored, and to act upon what the inner voice reveals. Transformation begins not with grand gestures, but with awareness. The first step is the cultivation of self-observation. Jung taught that before we can change, we must learn to see ourselves clearly. This means observing our reactions, thoughts, and emotions without judgment. When anger arises, we do not suppress it. We inquire, what is this emotion asking me to understand? When jealousy, fear, or shame appears, we turn toward it instead of away. The act of witnessing transforms. It releases the energy trapped in repression and reveals the deeper motives beneath our behavior. In time, patterns emerge, the hidden storylines of the unconscious made visible. This awareness is the foundation of individuation, for one cannot integrate what one cannot see. Dreamwork is another powerful tool for self-transformation. Jung saw dreams as nightly communications from the unconscious, guiding us toward wholeness. Begin by keeping a dream journal beside your bed. Upon waking, record even the faintest fragments. Over time, symbols will recur, animals, landscapes, figures that carry personal meaning. Reflect on them not through intellect but through intuition. Ask yourself, what emotion does this image evoke? What might it be showing me about myself? The goal is not interpretation through logic, but relationship through feeling. Dreams are the language of the soul, and listening to them awakens the dialogue between ego and self. Active imagination deepens this dialogue further. It is the conscious engagement with the images, voices, or sensations that arise from within. Close your eyes and allow a symbol or figure from a dream to appear. Instead of analyzing it, speak to it. Ask what it wants, what it represents, what lesson it brings. Then allow yourself to respond, as if conversing with another being. Through this exchange, unconscious content becomes conscious, and energy once trapped in shadow is released into creativity, healing, and insight. Jung himself used this method daily, recording his dialogues with the psyche in what became the Red Book, a testament to the power of imagination as a bridge to the unconscious. Equally essential is shadow work. This is the deliberate act of confronting the disowned aspects of the self. Notice the traits you criticize in others. They often mirror something unacknowledged in you. Rather than condemning these qualities, explore their purpose. For instance, anger may conceal a need for boundaries. Envy may point to unlived potential. To integrate the shadow is to reclaim power from projection. The moment we stop running from our darkness, it transforms from a monster into a teacher. Finally, Jung emphasized the necessity of meaning. Without meaning, life becomes mechanical, and transformation cannot take root. Meaning arises when we align our outer life with inner truth, when our work, relationships, and creative pursuits become expressions of the self. This does not require perfection, but authenticity. Follow what feels alive, what stirs the depths of your being. The psyche speaks through resonance. What draws you inward is often what your soul needs to grow. Live symbolically. See every challenge as initiation, every failure as refinement, every encounter as mirror. The more you live in this symbolic awareness, the more the world itself begins to communicate. Synchronicities multiply, intuition sharpens, and ordinary moments become sacred. True transformation is not a destination but a rhythm, a lifelong unfolding. There will be regressions, darkness, resistance, but each cycle deepens the alchemy. The ego learns humility, the shadow becomes wisdom, and the self begins to shine through daily life. To practice Jung's psychology is to remember that enlightenment is not found in escape, but in engagement, with the dream, with the wound, with the mystery of being human. The path of self-transformation, as Jung revealed, is not a journey toward becoming something new. It is a return to what has always been hidden within us. We descend into darkness not to be consumed by it, but to retrieve the fragments of our soul scattered across the years. Through awareness, shadow work, and dialogue with the unconscious, we awaken from the hypnosis of the persona and meet the vast self that has been guiding us all along. The outer world begins to mirror the inner one, and life itself becomes a living symbol of our evolution. This is the true psychology of transformation, the alchemy of turning suffering into wisdom, fear into strength, and division into unity. As Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. So dare to descend, dare to see, for within the depths of your own mind lies the very light you've been searching for.